So balancing work, life, and travel is a challenge. I get asked all the time, how do I find time to travel? How do I save money to travel? So I figured it was about time we talked about it. Welcome back to I'll Pack My Bags. I'm your host, Erin, and today I'm chatting with Lauren. She's a fellow travel blogger and a travel enthusiast, and she's also the host of a hilarious and insightful podcast called Somebody Date Us. Hi, Lauren.
Hi.
Tell us about your podcast.
Okay, well, I know it has nothing to do with travel, but I started my podcast, Somebody Date Us, with two of my now best friends. Just basically to talk about like the chronicles of like dating in the city and being single in your like late 20s and navigating all the dating apps and everything else that exists now in the 21st century. So we talk about all sorts of things.
Awesome. You were texting me today saying you got mailed some vibrators
today. They're in my backpack right now.
The perks.
Like, what is my life? Like, I'm literally like at this like pharmacy picking up my FedEx package and I'm like, there's vibrators in here. 3 vibrators.
Are you going to write a review on them?
Yeah, we're going to do a whole episode on it.
Nice.
So stay tuned.
Nice. So before we dive in, remember that if you like the podcast or have something to say about it, don't be shy. Please give us a review and a rate on iTunes. You can also subscribe while you're at it. So do you want to tell us more about yourself? Like, what else do you do in life?
So I am a full-time social media manager for a large Canadian retailer in my daytime hours. And then outside of those hours, I have obviously my podcast, and then I also have a travel blog called Twirl the Globe. And then I try to find time to travel on top of all that.
Yep.
My limited vacation days.
Yep.
But,
Feel your pain. Do you want to tell us about your relationship to travel, just to like frame the convo today?
Yeah. So I feel like, I've loved travel for as long as I can remember. My family, like my parents really tried to make travel a big part of our lives, like as much as possible. Like we didn't go on exotic vacations as kids or anything, but my dad traveled a lot for work. And so I think he saw the importance of allowing us to travel and giving us the opportunities to when they presented themselves. But I think it was like probably when I was in college that it really like the travel bug just like bit me hard. And I think that's when I realized like, wow, there is so much in this world. I need to see it all. I don't really have any money and I don't know how I'm going to do it. But I'm still trying to figure that part out, kind of. But ever since then, I've just been like addicted to like traveling everywhere possible.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because my parents were travelers themselves when they were young. And then when we were growing up, we never left the country as a family, but my parents would encourage us to travel, but it was like encouraging us to save money and travel on our own. And now like my siblings also travel a lot and we all are obsessed. And my parents, it's just ironic because they never brought us traveling. They just like instilled in us this idea that it was like a worthy thing to put money towards.
And I think that's where it kind of stems from for most people. Like I think people that had parents that didn't ever travel and didn't really understand it, they don't travel now as adults. So they're like, oh, one day I'll travel, and they're not motivated to or not motivated to spend their money that way. Because they never really were surrounded by it or given the opportunity to see how great it is, right?
Yeah, so totally. Want to tell us about one of your most memorable trips?
Oh boy. Oh my God. I feel like every trip is so memorable. It's like when people ask me what my favorite country is, and I'm like, it's so hard to compare them all. But I would say maybe like my trip to India. My sister and I did India a couple of years ago now. We did it on a tour because we just like had no idea how to conquer India in like 2 weeks. But it's just like, you've been to India. It's like such a just a mind-blowing place. Like it's just, you don't believe places like this exist in the world, and you go there and you're like, I don't even know how I'm supposed to feel right now. Like all of my senses are like on fire. I just don't even know what's happening. And I remember like before I went on that trip saying to my sister, like, I'm prepared to have like a mental breakdown while I'm there. Like I know
I had several.
Yeah. I was like, I know it's going to be so overwhelming. And like, I'm just prepared for it. And I didn't have any mental breakdowns, but I felt like I was just like numb the whole time. Like my senses were like so alive that I'm like, I just don't know how to feel. Like, I don't know, like Like, what's happening around me?
I was so tired. Like, I slept so much because you're so overwhelmed all the time that it just drains all your energy.
It's true. Like, you have to be, like, really aware everywhere you go.
Yeah. Oh, I had so many meltdowns. It's a miracle that my partner's still with me. Like, this is how I know that he really loves me. Like, because we survived that.
I remember saying to my sister, I was like, I think, when I find a boyfriend, I'm just gonna like send him to India with me. I'm like, that will be the true test. Like I want a guy that will travel with me, but like that's like next level traveling. So like just throw him in.
It's funny because that's what my parents did right before they got married.
Went to India?
They went to India.
Well, are they still together?
Yeah.
There we go. There's proof in this.
Surefire. Okay, so we're gonna get into it. Just for a disclaimer, I work full-time and I have for the last 2 years. Prior to that, I was a grad student, so I did a master's degree. And during that time, my life was so chill. Anyone who's been to grad school knows, like you have a lot of work, but it's all like based on your own schedule. So I could manipulate my schedule to travel a lot. And I had so much time and like control over my schedule. And I worked in a restaurant. And if you work in a restaurant in downtown Toronto, you make a lot of money. And so I was making like more money than I ever have in my professional life. And so those were my glory years of travel during my master's. I traveled like 3 or 4 times a year on like month-long trips because I could afford to somehow. And I had time. And so transitioning into working full-time, like for a company, has been very, very hard for me. Yeah. It felt like very suffocating. So I just wanted to give that disclaimer because I'm coming to this conversation having experienced like both sides of the coin, like having immense freedom and then like having it ripped away from you by capitalism. So
well, and I mean, I've never had the freedom. So, I mean, I guess like maybe when I was in college, but I had no money then.
Yeah.
But I started working right out of college and I still feel suffocated. So I don't know if that ever goes away.
I don't know. How many vacation days do you get?
I get like 15.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, like 3 weeks. I've always had 3 weeks. But I mean, when you like to go on vacations that are to exotic places, like 3 weeks is not a lot. Like it's a lot if you go to Florida or something, but
and the thing is, like the 3 weeks, if you factor in like the day here and there that you need like a long weekend or like going home for a week or more at Christmas, once you factor in like family time and like other things in life that come up, it's really not a lot of time off.
Yeah, I know.
Especially if you want to go somewhere far and you want to go for like longer than 8 days. Yeah, so I'm really lucky because in my job I get 5 weeks, but that's like completely unheard of.
Oh my gosh!
And I wouldn't even put like
Are they
all
hiring?
5. I just got hired, so I'll find out.
Yeah, let me know.
But that's really unheard of. So in Canada, 2 weeks to 3 weeks seems to be the average for people. In both my previous jobs, I only had 10 days, which is
I think
absurd.
that's like the legal amount, right? Like you have to give people 10 days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're definitely not alone in this sentiment of feeling suffocated. I found many Reddit threads about people asking, how do you balance work and travel? It was literally like a revolving door of the same question. People are really stressed out about this.
No one's figured it out.
So people wonder how to afford frequent travel. How do they get time off? So I amalgamated the most common responses. This is what like people said you need to do. You need to travel in between jobs, which I guess is like possible.
I feel like I've just never had the luxury to like be like, I can start in 4 weeks from now.
Same. That has not been my experience. Yeah. And also like, how often are we going to change jobs?
Yeah.
And it's so unpredictable. So like, I just changed jobs now, but I don't have the money right now to travel.
Exactly. It has to be like very planned. But.
Exactly. 2, own your own business. Everyone's dream.
Yeah.
Also, though, like people that I know who own their own business don't seem to have that much time.
Yeah, they don't have. That's what I was just gonna say. It's like easier said than done. Like, there's not very many entrepreneurs with a life. I don't know what business I'm supposed to start that doesn't involve me, like my whole life.
I know. All these people on the internet talk about being a digital nomad, which I feel like is not a real thing. Like, there's something fishy about the way people talk about it, because I always see ads being like, become a digital nomad in 2 months.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how?
I mean, I work in social media marketing, and that is technically a job that can be done from anywhere. So that can be the frustrating part of it, because I sit in my cubicle and I'm like, I could literally be anywhere else doing this exact thing. So I guess if you found the right place that allowed you, that like hired you full time, but you could do it remotely. Like, my friend's a graphic designer, and she convinced her workplace to like let her move to Australia with her now husband while he went to law school, and just work remotely. And she still, like, 5 years later, still works remotely, and she lives back in Canada and, like, doesn't have to go to the office. But, like, I don't think that happens very often.
Yeah, true.
Like,
I've also noticed, though, like, a lot of people, especially our age, don't advocate really hard for those things. So that's something I've been trying to do more in my work life, is, like, advocate for myself and be assertive about those things. So, like, in my previous job, I was like, no, I need to work from home 1 day a week. And I think, like, more of us need to try to do that, because then it'll, like, kind of shift the way the workplace treats those things.
Yeah.
Like, I think, like, remote working is becoming... Offices are realizing, like, there's value in that, in letting your employees stay home for a day. It's also cheaper for them.
Yeah.
So there's benefits.
I think that will get easier, too, when, like, the older generations slowly, like, retire and, like, millennial generations step into the senior roles.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, we're all, like, in the same mentality, right? But,
yeah. Working abroad, which is something I've done, just, like, getting a visa to live somewhere else. But if you want to have a career... not the best option.
Yeah, you kind of have to just, like, not be picky about the kind of job you're going to get.
Exactly. Study abroad. Did you ever do that?
I did not. I went on an exchange when I was in, like, grade 10.
Yeah.
But it was only for 3 weeks, so it wasn't, like, an extended thing. But
yeah. I did a study abroad, and it was amazing. And if anyone listening to this podcast is young enough that they can still do that, like, do it.
I debated multiple times. Like, I applied to universities in, like, Australia and England, and I think it was, like, I was at a point where I'm, like, looking at the price of it. I was just like, like, I wish I should have just done it. Like, what's money at that point? You'll pay it off eventually, but, like, one day.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I never did it.
So the struggle for me has been balancing my love of travel with my desire for a career. I'm sure, like, a lot of people can relate to this. So I've done working abroad, I've done studying abroad, but now I really want to work, like, long-term on a career, so that, because, like, and this is, okay, I wrote about this for you, actually.
Oh, okay.
I grapple with this because as much as I love my career and, like, want to have that, it's, like, in direct combat with my love of travel, and it feels like you can't have both.
I know, it's like the devil and angel on each shoulder. It's like,
yeah,
because I feel the same way. As, like, I've always been a career driven person, and I've wanted to build a career for myself, and, like, I went to college and spent all this money, and, like, I do love what I do, but I also love travel, and, like, I have not yet figured out a way to do both. And yeah, like, I'm constantly torn. Like, I sit in my cubicle some days and I'm like, why don't I just quit my job and, like, move to Bali? Like, but then there's the other side of me is like, no, Lauren, like, you cannot do this. you like your job. You like having an apartment in Toronto.
I know, but this is the thing. So when we finished grad school, my partner and I, we both went on a trip for 8 months. And I remember leaving and thinking, this is career suicide. And people told me, they were like, this is career suicide. This is the moment that you should be getting a job and starting your career. And when we came back, we had deep anxiety about this, because we were like, we're screwed. Like, we'll never get a job. We're too old now. We don't have the experience. Like, we've been off doing nothing for, like, 8-9 months. And we got back. I had a job in 2 weeks. He had a job in a month. And we were like, this literally had no impact.
Yeah.
Whether I had done this 8 months ago or not, like, it's fine.
That's
so
true.
I think a lot of the time we get wrapped up in the idea that a career has to, like, have a continuous flow to it, where, like, those little breaks, I'm not sure that they're as bad as people tell us they are.
Well, I think it's also we were raised by a generation that, like, got a job and worked that job for 50 years and then retired. Like, and our generation is so different, and that's why there's so many, like, people that hate us in the workplace. But, like, we know that we can get other jobs, and none of us are going to stay in our jobs for 50 years. Like, I, like, am bored in a job after a year. So I can't imagine staying in a job for that long. And So I think that's like part of it, is that we were raised a certain way. So when we feel a different way, we're like, no, that's not right. That's not the way you're supposed to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. So what drives you to want to have a career?
I think like I want to have like something to my name. Like I know traveling and like you could be that person that traveled to all these places and like that's awesome and I want to be that person, but I also want to like die knowing I accomplished more than just traveling. Like I want to know that I like had a career and I built my name and I did all these cool things professionally, as well as did all these cool things outside of my 9-to-5 job. So like that to me, I get accomplishment from like career things and career moves and stuff. And I don't know also if I traveled full time, if I would like it as much. I would like to travel more than I do, but if I traveled all of the time and never had a home base and anything to really come home to, I don't know if I would like it as much. I don't know.
Yeah. In my experience of long-term travel, it feels very different than short trips. Not even short trips, because I've done like everything from like a 2-week trip to a month, and then I've done like 8-9 month stints. And the long stints feel more, I don't know how to describe it other than like your life is travel.
Yeah.
Like it's not traveling anymore. It's just like, oh, this is my life now. Every day I wake up, I have to find somewhere to eat. I have to get on a bus. It just becomes like everyday life.
Yeah.
So it feels very different than like the act of traveling. I don't know. And when I think back to like the last time I did that, it feels like this like weird different chapter of my life that's like not related to my career at all. But I completely agree with the sentiment of like wanting to feel that you've accomplished something professionally. And for me, a lot of it is like tied up in my education because I have like so much education.
Yeah.
And it feels like a waste to not have had a career to like match that education that I worked so hard for. Also, I need to pay my student loans off.
Well, yeah. And then there's that other side of me that's like, I don't think I could live like, I don't think I'm that much of like the kind of person that could just live working at hostels or working the odd job here and there, never really knowing where my money's coming from. And some days like being like, I have $5 to like get through this country.
Yeah.
Like I I'm a creature of routine usually in my day-to-day life. So to not know where my money's coming from and how I'm gonna live like gives me a bit of anxiety.
Yeah, totally. I also just find there's like great security in the career, like you said, like knowing what my paycheck will be and what day it's arriving. There's something like beautiful about that, and knowing that like I have long-term security now, which is different than when I was a server. Like everything felt a little bit like scary because like yes, you're making a lot of money, but like for that to translate to a secure future, you have to be really smart with your money, which I'm not. So a career like where you're paying into like your retirement automatically is much better for me and feels safer.
Like how good does it feel when you come back from a trip to your own shower, your own bed, like your laundry that you drink out of the tap, brush your teeth out of the tap, and you're like, like I love home, but I love being away.
You just made me think of something that always makes me laugh whenever we travel. So like, where was the last place? Jordan. We were in Jordan. You can't put the toilet paper in the toilet. Entire trip, I'm like forgetting, trying to remember all the time. Finally, in the last few days of the trip, like I've got it. Like I remember, don't put the toilet paper in the toilet, like in the wastebasket. Got it the last like 5 days. Then we come home and I find myself everywhere I go throwing it in the wastebasket. And it's like, why do I learn it right at the end of the trip? And then I'm coming home like looking like a fool in the bathrooms in Canada.
Yeah, you like hesitate, like, should I put my toothbrush under the tap? Like, what is this world? Is the shower going to be cold? We're so spoiled in Canada, really.
I know. It's so much privilege. So let's talk legalities and the norms around the world when it comes to vacation time. This was actually so interesting for me to research. So Ontario's Employment Standards Act, Ontario is the province we live in, by the way, for all you non-Canadians. So in Ontario, most people have the right to 2 to 3 weeks of paid vacation in a year. You earn your vacation by working 12 months for the same employer. This varies throughout the province. throughout the provinces of Canada, but 2 to 3 weeks vacation is pretty standard. So I thought it would be interesting to compare this to other countries just to get a sense of like whether we're actually being suffocated or if this is like the norm around the world. Because I've noticed, and maybe you've noticed this too, whenever I encounter Europeans, their minds are blown that we only have that much vacation
or
time.
they're just like always on vacation.
Yeah.
Well, don't you guys work? Same with Australians. What do Australians get?
I don't know. Actually, I do know. I have it written down here.
Okay, tell me more.
Okay. According to my research, by law, every country in the EU has at least 4 weeks of paid vacation. 4 weeks.
And like, I'm sure there's some employers that are like, I'm going to give them more. Because there's always employers that are like...
And that's when you start your job. So if you like are in an entry-level job... 20 days of vacation to begin. So it like builds up. Like I have Dutch family and one of my uncles, he gets like 2 months off a year just because it's like accrued throughout his career. Austria, which guarantees workers the most time off, has a legal minimum of 22 paid vacation days and 13 paid holidays each year. Wow, that's wild.
They must celebrate a lot of things there.
They do.
13? Like...
Yo.
That seems aggressive. But I mean, I need to move there. But
when I lived in Holland, it felt like every other weekend we had a long weekend. I loved it. So Business Insider reports that in Brazil, after a year of employment at a job, workers are entitled to 30 days of paid annual leave. Additionally, they are granted a vacation bonus equal to a third of their monthly salary.
This is the thing that bothers me. Like, I just feel like employees deserve vacation. And I get, like, if I requested 2 months off in a row, like, that would be a little aggressive. Like, who's going to do my job for 2 months? But, like, if you spread out 5 weeks across the year, like, it really doesn't feel like that much.
No, it's really not. It's not going to have a massive impact.
No.
But for some reason, all these companies think it will.
Yeah.
Or it could also boil down to them not wanting to pay you. But in my previous job, I took unpaid time.
I've done that too.
Yeah. Just because the time off is more valuable to me than money in some cases.
Well, and I also had a friend who worked somewhere that had unlimited vacation days. And she said, she's like, in theory, it was great. She's like, if you worked there, you would take the advantage of it in a good way and you would use it. But she's like, most people just felt guilty about taking vacation there. She's like, most people didn't even use 3 weeks of that, like, let alone like take advantage of like, because like there's also people that like all the people that don't like to travel, like not you and I, like that don't use 3 weeks vacation. Like they carry them over every year. They're like, I got vacation to use. I'm like, pardon? What? This is what? And they're like, well, I'm not gonna go on a vacation now. Like I'll just take them and stay at home or something. I'm like,
I don't understand.
Yeah, can I have them? Like there should be some sort of system where I can trade these things. Like.
But I think that kind of speaks to the psychology of work here, which is like, the more you work, the better you look.
Yeah, for sure.
And I've noticed that, like, have you ever noticed that talking to people, especially in Toronto, everyone's always busy. And it's kind of like a badge of honor, like how busy you are. And this really bothers me sometimes because I'm like, why can't I just be like, no, I'm not busy and not feel ashamed?
Yeah, I have some friends that work jobs where they're working until like midnight every night. And I was like, you realize you could like have a job that pays you the same, if not more, and you can leave at 5 p.m. every day, right? Like I'm very much a 9 to 5 girl, like on the odd night, sure, whatever.
Yeah.
But I believe that if you're not paying me or if I'm not banking overtime, I'm not staying.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, I'm contracted for those 8 hours.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but
that is so normal in Toronto for people to work ridiculous hours. Yeah, I don't understand it. In Spain, an employee's holiday schedule is decided in a mutual agreement between the employee and the employer, and it can never be less than 30 calendar days in a 12-month period.
A mutual agreement. So you could just like be like, I need 6 weeks. Yeah. Listen.
Yeah, negotiate.
6 months, preferably, but...
Yeah. Okay, down under, Australia. Full-time employees get 4 weeks of paid leave for every year they're at a given job.
I thought it'd be more, but I also think since Australia is like in the middle of nowhere, that when they are traveling, they're traveling for a long period of time.
They are. And actually, now that you say that, a lot of the Australians I've encountered traveling. So I met this couple one time and they were on a year-long trip and they were like, yeah, we just talked to our jobs, and they were like, take the year off and come back like after a year.
I wish.
I know. And then I met a guy who, same thing. He was like, yeah, I'm just on a 6-month trip. Like, I'll go back to my job when I go back.
I also find this is kind of unrelated, but I find it funny when you speak to someone who's from like that part of the world, because it's so far away from us, where they're like, my dream is to go to Cuba. And you're like, what? Like, literally people get married in Cuba. Like, everyone in Canada has been there like 5 times because of like weddings or like all-inclusive vacations with their families or something. It's like, not like, I would love to go to Cuba. I actually haven't been, but it is like one of the most common travel destinations if you live in Canada. And they're like, it's my dream to go there, like to Dominican or something. And you're just like, but like for the equivalent would be like us being like, I want to go to New Zealand or
Bali.
Yeah,
because Bali is kind of the Cuba of Australia. Yeah. I feel like, because it's like the sunny beachy getaway that people go to. That's like super cheap for them because it's such a short flight.
Right? It's so funny when you like put it in perspective.
Yeah. The Department of Labor in South Africa stipulates that workers must receive 21 consecutive days of paid annual leave, 1 day off for every 17 days worked, or 1 hour off for every 17 hours worked. I'm not good at math and I don't understand this system.
That would be a complicated system. I'd be like, I don't even know how many vacation days I have.
And what's 21 consecutive days mean? They have to take 3 weeks off in a row?
At once?
I don't know.
What, do you have the U.S. down there?
Yeah, okay. U.S. is an interesting one.
Okay.
The U.S. Department of Labor does not provide a legal minimum for paid annual leave. Ooh. It's up to the employer to decide.
So I wonder what the average is there. I feel like that is a much shittier deal than we have.
Yeah. Yeah, it says about 74% of American workers have access to paid vacation, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. So I guess
it's a matter of days.
Yeah, so I guess that means there are people who don't have paid vacation.
Yeah.
That's absurd.
What is North America doing?
I know, right? I still think we have a pretty sad situation though compared to other countries.
Yeah, by the sounds of it, like everyone, it seems to at least get like 4 weeks off.
Yeah. So
plus they're like 85 holidays.
And we're developed. Like, why wouldn't we know this by now? Yeah. Like, come on. Also, we live in such a gloomy, like, depressing.
Although there's so
like,
many.
We need it.
There's so many times I've traveled and I'm like, why haven't we figured this out yet? Like, I remember Europe got like the PIN Visa and debits like a century ago, and the U.S. still doesn't have it in a lot of places.
I know.
Like, I remember traveling to Europe as a teenager and it being like, they might not accept your credit cards if they aren't chip. And we didn't even have that yet. Like, it was like an exotic innovation. Like,
I remember when I was traveling in Europe, when I went backpacking for the first time, I was 19 years old. I was told I wouldn't be able to use any of my cards. I carried cash the entire
Traveler's
time.
checks.
Yeah. Like, basically, no one had mobile phones. I would this is so funny. I had a laptop and I would sit in the hostel on the Wi-Fi and I would hand draw a map of how to find my next hostel. And I have a notebook somewhere filled with these hand-drawn maps.
But like, isn't it kind of sad that like, our kids will never know what it was like to travel with like a real map?
Yeah, it is. Okay. All right, so as shitty as it is, I guess it's important for us to recognize that we're definitely privileged to have job security, have the means to travel, and also like have a passport that enables us to travel with ease. So I guess what I'm saying is, as shitty as it is to only have so much vacation, at least we have some privilege.
We have like major first world problems over here.
I know, it actually is.
Like, no one's listening to this podcast unless they have first world problems. So.
So, like, even though these privileges have definitely framed today's conversation, I think it's important to recognize that even if time off isn't used to travel per se, everyone deserves to have time off. And that, like, ties into what you were saying before about people who either don't use their time off at all or use it to stay at home. Mm-hmm. Like, that's still... I wouldn't do that. Like, exactly. I can't imagine at least you're doing that. But at least, like, people should do that. Mm-hmm. They should definitely take advantage. Because I think when people, like, don't use their vacation time, that kind of sends a message to employers. Like, just use the time so that employers, like, don't see people not using the time and think, oh, they don't need it.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for tuning into part 1 of this episode. Heading into part 2, we're going to talk dating while traveling. I mean, since you're the host of a dating podcast, I thought it would be really fun to talk about this.
The pressure.
And we want to get Lauren's hot takes on hookup culture abroad. So we'll catch you on the flip side.